All right, thank you, and welcome to another episode of Unique Genius in 33. I am super excited to be here today with Miss Tiffany, who is going to talk to us all about her special gift of individualization. So, Tiffany, before we move on, please take a moment to introduce yourself to everyone, a little bit about who you are, what you do, and if you can share your top 5 talents, not just individualization with us, that would be great. Thanks.
Absolutely. So I am Tiffany Coursey. I lead human resources at Holladay Properties. We are a real estate management company, and we're located here in Nashville, Tennessee. So I've spent my career in HR primarily focused on kind of that talent and culture space. So strengths was a natural partner to that as we began kind of a cultural journey here at Holladay. So excited to be here. My top 5 are input, communication, individualization, learner, and woo.
Oh, love it. Those are great.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here today. And I just want to let you know that we always start out by letting everyone know out there that Gallup says that people exceptionally talented in the individualization theme are intrigued with the unique qualities of each person. They have a gift for figuring out how different people can work together productively. And then we're going to talk about how you and your individualization are awesome, right? So we are going to celebrate that you celebrate the differences that make each person unique, that you make others feel special, that you recognize all factors which create the whole person, and that you personalize your intention. How's that sound? Does that sound about right?
Fantastic. I love
it. Great. And then, as we all know, our talents can occasionally maybe get in the way or not always be our best friend, right? And so we always like to evaluate. So we have questions that can help us notice when we might be getting a little bit off track. And so the 4 questions I have for individualization are: is the group being sacrificed for the individual?
Yep.
Am I valuing potential over performance? Are the rules too flexible? Am I being too flexible, bending to the desires and needs of others? So how do those hit home for you?
Yeah, those are
Feel like you could have used those questions at some point?
Yeah, yes, for sure. Those are challenging.
Yeah, no, I think they all come with their challenges. So we'll explore that in a little bit. But first, we want to know, what do you love about your talent of individualization? How does it serve you?
Yeah, I often tell people I know that all themes are equal, and no theme is better than the other, except for I really love individualization the most. So for me, what I love the most is really that it offers me the ability to really see people for who they are. Like, I love what is unique and special about each person, and I love getting to know them and just meeting them where they are in whoever they are and whatever they bring to the team or to whatever experience we're having.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. So if you flip that coin over, where do you feel like individualization can occasionally get in the way for you?
Yeah, I think that ties a lot into the questions you were just asking, right? Like, how do I make sure, particularly as an HR professional, that I am not over customizing? Like, there are times when it's not appropriate for me to customize to every individual. There are rules and processes and policies on purpose because in an organization, it doesn't work. Right. I also really resonated with the question around, am I seeing potential and not recognizing performance? Because I very much, because of my desire to meet someone where they are, sometimes it's hard to separate that from where are we right now and how do we deal with that, rather than just always working towards meeting them in that place. So that can certainly be a challenge that I have to work through.
Sure. Now, with the last question, I'm just kind of curious. Do you feel like with your individualization, do you remember to make yourself special?
I think self-care is something that I work on. I think that as I've gotten older, I recognize the need for it more, but it is certainly easier for me to focus on the other person and make sure that I'm really seeing them and celebrating who they are.
Sure. And so if we look at how this has been a thread sort of throughout your life, how have you seen individualization develop from you being a child or a young girl, young woman, into who you are now, even before you knew it was a talent?
Yeah, I think that I have always, like, individualization, maybe as much as some of the other, more than the other themes, has always just been an innate thing for me. I always have been intrigued by people and their stories and where they come from and what they bring. So that I think I've seen that develop over time. And now, knowing individualization, I lean into it more specifically than maybe I did. But I'm a classic customizer, whether it's with people or with processes or things. Like, I want it to be exactly what this situation needs. I'm also the quintessential individualization gift giver. Like, I don't want to just give a gift. And it's ironic because I actually see that in my family too. So I wonder, you know, how many of us bring that because we're all really intentional about what we give, and it being for the person, not just a thing to give.
Right. It's funny. My father and I, just bringing that up, because I do think, you know, we look at these and our talents are nature and nurture, right? Like, it's a little bit of both. And sometimes it can be hard to determine whether it was, you know, something we were born with or something we were just raised with. Right. And it's, you know, and it's what we have there. But my father and I were very intentional about card giving. And I've always been very intentional about giving cards to people. When I gave a card to someone, it had to be like the message, the thing I would want to say to them if I couldn't say it myself. And there was one Christmas where my father and I did not get each other a Christmas card because neither of us could find a card that said what we wanted it to say. And we were both, I'm so sorry, I didn't get your card this year. I couldn't find a good one. Oh, I didn't get one for you either because I couldn't find a good one. It was always one of those, like, you know, kind of bonding things. So I very much understand that gift perspective. And do you ever recognize, and this might go back to a little bit of, it might get into the next question of, like, what do you wish other people knew about individualization? I'm gonna hold off on my question. I want you to talk me through that. What do you think other people should know about individualization that could maybe help alleviate some misunderstandings?
I think, at least for me, one of the things I would want people to know is that, and this ties a bit into my communication. So one of the things with my individualization is I really work to customize how I interact with someone, the language I use, how I speak, to make sure that I am meeting them where they are. And so what I would want people to know is that comes from a place of genuine positive intent. My intent is never to shape shift for my own benefit. Generally speaking, I am coming from a place of, how do I tailor myself to you so that you can get the greatest benefit out of whatever our interaction is. And I think that can easily be misinterpreted, particularly if you don't know me or know someone with high individualization well.
Right. You might feel maybe it's superficial or has an ulterior motive or something.
Yeah. Like, why do you, I think particularly if you see someone in multiple scenarios or interacting with multiple types of groups, you can wonder why it looks different. And so you could easily, I think, make an assumption of, oh, she's not genuine. She's using that to either get what she wants or to manipulate the outcome, when really the true intention is for the best of whatever that person or that group might need.
Right. Is there any particular example or situation that comes to mind if you're thinking through that, like where maybe there's been
not that anyone's told me.
Well, that's good. Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. But I think more so I recognize it in myself. I recognize how easily I will tailor my language from one person to another, even on the same topic. So maybe it's, for me, a self-awareness of how that might be perceived if those two people then talked about whatever conversation we had, where it was really the same content but presented in a little different way.
Okay. So I'm curious now if this goes back to a little bit about how you feel if someone's doing that to you. Do you question someone else's motives maybe? I think of a salesman's approach, right? Like I've been accused sometimes of mimicking people, which I adapt my accent sometimes. I adapt my mannerisms. I might sit the way they're sitting. And I honestly don't do it intentionally. Yeah. It is really, I think, my way of adapting myself to someone so that they feel more comfortable with me and so that they're not at dis-ease with whatever the situation is or unease at the situation. And, it's kind of been pointed out and I've thought about it. And I'm like, oh, I do that. Yeah. But when someone's doing it to me in an inauthentic way, I can like really pick up on it. Yeah. I'm really sensitive to it. Would you say that you're sensitive to that kind of thing, maybe just because of knowing what you do?
Yeah. So as you were talking, my initial reaction was, I don't think that my initial reaction was that I think I'm sensitive to knowing when it's not authentic. Like I feel, hopefully I can appreciate someone else doing it in a, with the positive intentions. But if it seems like you're doing it just to get something from me, that certainly does feel off-putting.
Yeah, because I think that's where it comes from in our talents just in general, right? Like when we know that we have positive intent, but we can sort of see it in others, that we become sort of hypersensitive to, am I coming across that way? I hope that's not what's coming, right? And so whatever that talent happens to be, right? I think we just get sort of hypersensitive. And that follows along with something I've noticed with people with individualization is, there is this deep desire to make everyone feel special. Do you get your feelings hurt if you don't feel special or recognized?
If I don't personally feel special or recognized, I think it probably depends on the situation and what I've invested in it. Right? Like, I don't think I have a overly sensitive need to receive recognition. I do think though, and this is where, and this, and our viewers who are deep in strengths know this, all of our strengths begin to play together in a special way. So my woo is where my feelings get hurt more. Like if I don't make you feel special enough for you to want to love me, that is where it gets that's where I have a more struggle than being recognized.
Right. So that woo individualization of winning somebody over and knowing that you've given enough attention to them that it is merited, right? To receive that kind of reception. All right, cool. I can see that. Well, and then thinking about those talent combinations, we don't always go into these on this program, but just listening to you speak and knowing that you have input. And did you mention learner too? Because I didn't write it down.
I do.
Yeah. I can imagine that those are highly people driven.
They are. I talk about this a lot when we do strength stuff here and we're introducing it and kind of talking about how they interplay, because I have kind of a trifecta, particularly I think with input, individualization, and communication. So I take in a ton of information about people, and I know this isn't a conversation on input, but I retain unreasonable amounts of detail, particularly about people.
Well, it's that interest in the individualization and wanting to have that information necessary that is going to be just heavily driven by input, right?
Right. And my input wants it available when it's needed to tailor the interaction. And then you add that to communication. And I have, generally speaking, a good ability to really, that's, I guess I say, when meet you where you are, because input helps me pay really close attention to the interest I have in people, and then to tailor that interaction, hopefully, so I give you what you most need to feel special, encouraged, whatever that might be.
Right. Well, and I imagine this serves you incredibly well, working in human resources.
Yeah, it has so far.
I would imagine. And I can see where it could be a double-edged sword.
Sure. Yeah. So I often use kind of this example of the not as pretty side. So when you add communication into that, I store all of this information. I remember the details about what is important and special to people. And then I can put words together that best meet that person. That
Right.
most often is used in a scenario to build people up. But
Mm-hmm.
when I look back over my life and when I was not as refined, it can easily be used to find words that cut and not build people up. So again, much more mature in that, but I can look back over my life as an adolescent, young adult, where I was not using those themes as positively as I hope I do now.
Sure. Well, and that's a great recognition to have, right? To understand that, it is a maturity, it is a development. And especially when we don't know that talent, we just sort of do what we do naturally, which isn't always at our highest interest or the highest interest of others, right? And we recognize that. And that's where those questions come in. So I love that you have that realization that, oh, well, that's probably what made me really good at doing that, even though it may not have been the best thing to do.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
And because I could see that side of it, able to then say, okay, that's really not that hard then to repurpose and use it for the highest and best use of both myself and the people that I serve.
Right. I love that reframe. I love I love how you just sort of took something that was really raw and could reframe it and like, okay, I can do this in a way that serves me negatively or serves others negatively, but how do I change that? Use that same power to do something positive and having, a nice and beneficial impact on others, right? I think that was really nice. Catherine, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw them in the chat or take yourself off mute and feel free to ask anything you'd like to know about individualization. Glad you're joining us today. And then we were kind of having this conversation yesterday in our little brief conversation. So it's the famous person or a fictional character. Has anyone come to you to think of what?
No. And
what embodies that?
I guess maybe not positively. I kept thinking, gosh, it seems like that could certainly be, I think anyone in an altruistic, if you will, role could easily have that. Someone that really meets people where they are. I think when we talked yesterday, you mentioned Princess Diana. Just in that,
for some reason, she
seeing
was came
people.
up to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And that I can appreciate that. I think also, I wonder if I'm so close to it that it's hard for me to see when other people do it. And also, I wonder I wonder how easy, and you tell me because I have it, so it's supernatural to me, how easy it is to see people do that when you don't know that it's one of their natural themes.
Well, and I think one of the things I said is like, I have no idea if Diana was good at giving gifts or not, right? Like,
exactly.
Like, it was one thing, like, I have no idea if she was good at doing that. But what struck me was just the quantity of people she had to mingle with and how graceful she mingled with people at every single station of life, at every level of development or age or whatever. It never came across as political or, oh, hello, how are you? Like, it was like she really saw that person where they were and was willing to take risks to see people who maybe weren't normally seen.
Right.
And so there was that's sort of where she came to me. And then as we were just talking, I thought about Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, I love it. Because
Winnie the Pooh sees everyone in 100 Acre Wood for like what they are.
Yeah.
Right. And he sort of like accepts and celebrates, that Eeyore isn't always happy. And he celebrates that, Tigger is always just bouncy and Tigger, and that, Rabbit's kind of a grump, and he just kind of goes with it with everyone.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. That is when I say meet people where they are, I appreciate that most about individualization, because I often, it's, whether it's seeing development over performance or seeing them where they are, I'm always willing to say, well, here's how they got there. Of course, Eeyore is a little grumpy because this may be the experience he's had, or this was what it looked like. So I can totally see Winnie the Pooh with that perspective on people.
Yeah. I don't know. My ideation, right? It just like randomly I'll pick something out there like, actually, now that we're talking about this, Winnie the Pooh came to mind. So great. So overall with strengths, what has been your experience with learning your talents and what you've learned by sharing those with others?
Yeah. So one, learning them for myself, I think was just an aha moment. It explained a lot of why. I guess I've had a lot of opportunity in my life to self-explore and to understand myself. And there was something about strengths that just explained how I got where I was. I think what I love about strengths is that perspective of, yes, it's not always refined, but we can always lean into it and be sensitive to how to refine it. And from a sharing, I've had the opportunity over the last 3 years, we brought this into our organization. And so all of our employees have gone through it, have taken the assessment, and all employees have either been through a workshop or will go through a new hire workshop. And there is something just really, of course, my individualization makes this like the most fun thing ever, but it is so fun to watch those light bulbs and to help people understand both the really amazing pieces of it and the pieces that might have gotten in their way, and us giving them power to get them out of their way, to turn them into strengths. I really think that's the beauty of this tool over lots of others, is it's not just, well, that's your personality and do your best with it. It's really, here's what makes you amazing in the world. And here are some questions and ideas and opportunities for you to be extraordinary as a result of them.
Yeah, no, I love that. And who have you shared strengths with? I mean, besides outside strong communities, but like in your family or?
Yeah, everybody knows. So I had the opportunity to do some coaching with my cousin who took the strengths assessment and found her top 5. And we were just able to dig into her reports and help her learn a little bit more about what's made her as successful as she is in places she wasn't expecting to be. I've also had the opportunity to share them in some life groups and in my church organization where people knew a little bit about them, and I was able to do some coaching around those and some teaching and learning. And I also am always talking about them because I just believe that it's a really simple tool that can be so powerful.
Yeah, I find it. So I'm curious, did you share your report with anyone close to you? Like your personalized report? Did you share it with anyone?
I shared my report with my cousin who took it. My husband, ironically, is, I think because I get so into it, he's like, I don't need you to analyze me too. So he has not, but he and I have talked a lot about my themes. So I know that he sees those show up. Right. But really, everyone that I think has seen, particularly my detailed report, the insight report, can see how it's very horoscopy, right? Like, how does it know I'm funny? I mean, I am, and I know, how does it know?
Yeah, it's one of those terms that, like, I know Gallup gets really upset when we say it's kind of, like a horoscope or an astrology. And I'm like, but it kind of is. It's the same, it is in the sense that it's the same kind of reaction of like, how could something know that much about me?
Right.
Like, because I always tell people, it's not going to tell you something you don't know about yourself. Right. But it's going to show it to you in a way that you can realize, oh, I do that. Oh, that's actually a good thing. Oh, I can use that for good, right? Like it's this realization of what you can do with that information and how you communicate it to others. It's not a surprise, this is who you are.
Right.
And I think that's the same feeling that horoscopes or astrology gives us as you read it and you go, oh my God, that really is me. Oh my God, that really is me. Like, oh, I so relate to this, right?
Yep.
And I always tell people when they're sharing their reports with people, and you can say your husband doesn't sound like he might be the most expressive person over these kinds of things if he wants to be more analytical, but I always tell people that you'll hear one of two common responses, and you'll hear them multiple times, is you'll hear, oh yeah, no, yep, that's you. Totally you. And then you'll hear the, oh,
right.
do that.
Yeah.
Right. And it gives someone that, oh, thanks, Catherine. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. It gives you that sense of not taking things personally anymore.
Right. Yes.
That person wasn't doing it to you. It's just what they do, and they can't quite help themselves. And now you can sort of detach that behavior from something that feels personal that really isn't.
Yes. We experienced that. We first rolled strings out with our senior leadership team. And that was one of really the nicest pieces, because much of that team had worked together for a long time. So it was that, oh, I get it. And also, here's how I can either support your the refined side of that, or challenge the raw side to encourage you to lean into the positive piece.
Right, to challenge it in a positive way. That's where I think it makes difficult conversations really a lot easier. You can say, hey, I kind of feel like your responsibility is getting a little out of control. Right? I can see you taking a lot onto your plate, and I know that that's something that you really need to do, but we need to be sure to delegate a little bit more. How can we help you say no? How can we help you move some things off your plate, right? Because there are talents out there that I think can also get easily abused by others without intentionally abusing them. Right? They have a great reputation, like achievers and responsibility. They're always going to get things done. If they say they're going to do it, it's going to happen. And so people just naturally gravitate to that because they need it, without realizing that everybody else is doing that too.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah.
Right. So I love that it gives you an entrance to difficult conversations from a positive place of understanding and knowing that it was not the intention, right? That there's a better way to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that your family was really highly individualistic as well. So, I mean, does the gift giving come from that? Was it a recognition thing? Like, where is that thread from your family? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I think, particularly in the gift giving, I see lots of, I also, like you, kind of fall into there is nature and nurture that's involved. Like we are born with things, and they're refined or not, kind of as we experience life. And gift giving was always Christmas time, gifts were always very intentional. They were not just rarely socks and t-shirts, right? It was always something special. I think that we also are a family who's very relational and very communicative. So there are like that learning piece, the communication piece, and the focus on people piece, which could show up in any number of the themes, but those are really common with all of my family in some way or another.
Right. Yeah. I always find that really fascinating to just look like the dynamics and relationships in families with talents and kind of how they come about. So, well, we're rounding up close to the end of our time. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And I think this was terrific. And there's a lot about individualization, and I just love your perspective on strengths. And I really appreciate how you took the negative and made it into a positive, and recognize the power of doing that with our strengths, right? That there is a way to flip that coin and move everything over. And so for everybody else who is out there listening to us, we are still out there on iTunes and on Podbean. You can listen to our 1-minute flash briefing either through Alexa, subscribe on Podbean, or you can subscribe to our iTunes channel. All of them are found under Strong Communities. And cannot believe it, we're just passing 200 episodes.
Wow.
So a lot of information out there. We've been doing it since February of this year. We're on week 18 of our deep dive. And this week we are looking at harmony, which is fascinating for me because it's my 34. So I always love learning about those that don't come naturally to me as well, and seeing seeing how beautiful it can show up in others. And so I invite you to come out and look up to listen to our podcast out there. And of course, we'll be here again next Wednesday with another fantastic guest from our community. Thank you so much for being with us today, Tiffany. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great week.
You too.